if you want.
Okay. All right. Well, with the roundtable discussions, you're always invited to talk. I went ahead and set up a PowerPoint to kind of ground a brief overview of the thought processes that are out there, just to kind of get everyone on the same page. And there is a school board meeting coming up this week, and it's an opportunity to talk to the board, to share with board members maybe some of your thoughts. But more important, I would recommend just calling in to listen, or after the fact. They do record it. You could always log on to their website after Thursday night and find the audio in their school board section of their website. And then that's a chance to listen. They typically get around to updating what's happening with all the changes that are going on and what they're looking at, and some of the planning that's going on. And a lot came out this last week on budget. So I imagine a lot of budget issues are going to come up. So if you don't mind, I think I will share my screen. And this PowerPoint is not to be done as a webinar, but rather to just kind of give us some ground points to start from. Are you all able to see my screen okay? When schools reopen? I can't see your faces anymore. Okay. All right.
Yes.
It says I'm sharing. So of course, so because I can't hear you, if you need to grab my attention and say something, I'm going to need you to unmute yourself and speak up, because I can't see your hands up, and unless you are, and I can't even see the chat window with this going on. So I'm a little bit limited in what I could tell that you're trying to convey to me. So just please speak up if you have any questions. So the CDC did post this week about what to consider for the communities when they're looking to reopen. It's a pretty nice flow chart of things, and I'm sorry it got cut off a little bit, but the majority of the information is here. You could find this at cdc.gov//coronavirus, but it gives a clear rundown of what they want to see before you could really open the schools and monitor. There's, it goes from please do not open, and we're somewhere in between right now, the do not open to safety actions in place right here in Santa Clara County. We've opened up to phase 2, but that hasn't opened us up enough to start letting crowds into the same spaces. So our hope is by the end of the summer, our numbers continue to, will dwindle by then. Unfortunately, if you looked at the Sunday's paper, we're still on this upward trajectory. So, so hopefully we will fall into one of these categories where we could start opening up the schools. So the Santa Clara County had also sent out a letter kind of talking about options. They don't spell out all the options that schools are looking at, but I just wanted to quickly go over what areas the guidelines they're looking at. Of course, they want to protect the safety and health of students, which goes back to the CDC plan. Plans must work to ensure equity, access, and inclusion, which we've heard from the California Department of Education as well. Eliminate opportunity gaps, address learning loss, and accelerate achievement. And I think all parents would like to see that happen. Promote innovative, high-quality teaching and learning across all environments, and we know that's not going to happen without a fair amount of professional development. Ensure fiscal stewardship aligned to students' needs, and this is where there's a lot of moving, it's like that shell game. There's a lot of moving cups, I feel, on the finances of our schools. Engage stakeholders in transparent, collaborative, and compassionate decision-making. So that's from the Santa Clara County Office of Education. But this list of 7 more options is what I was finding in different press releases to continue with distance learning, which is always, it's one of those 100%, no matter what happens, this is something you could constantly do. But a lot of families are not content And teachers are certainly not content with continuing with just distance learning. Teachers starting classes earlier in July. We've heard, this was something proposed by Governor Newsom. And again, we hear from the Teachers Association, this is not in the agreement. Districts cannot get things up to speed in order to open in July. So this is fairly unlikely. Have kids in school for half a day with some remote learning. That's one idea that's been out there and people have bounced it around. We'll see how it falls. Make in-person learning optional, which I think, given that the remote learning has actually been pretty successful for some students, and that there's some students that have, they're susceptible to illness or have illnesses that they just can't afford to get sicker. I could see how this would be a choice that we would need to have on the table. And then in-school instruction one day and distance learning the next day, the alternating days. Some are alternating within the day where kids come in the morning and then they switch student bodies. The other half of the student body comes in the afternoon. District changes to year-round school to make up for lost learning. And even though I've heard this proposed, I've yet to hear a superintendent say, that's great, let's do that. So we'll see how that works out. Students in certain grades will be expected to start the school year earlier. And that's a model that a couple different countries have looked at. I know that in Korea, they started with the high school kids, but because they had that outbreak in a dance club, sure enough, COVID showed up in a few schools sooner than they had expected. And when they looked at, followed the threads of where that started from, it was from karaoke. So I guess if we start with high school kids, we need to shut down all karaoke bars. And then in Denmark, they started with elementary because they thought it'd be helpful to use some of the older kids to come and work with the young kids and teach them all the lessons of how to give that respectful distance and washing hands. So it's kind of interesting that the older kids, but the overall thought is that older kids will take to safety protocols more easily. And, site by site, it'll be up to them. Some of the more likely options, though, I think, as I said, was to have kids in a half day with remote learning. And Sandra was kind enough to send me an article from the Innovate had, and they talked a little bit about some variances to do with the half days. Or
can I just clarify?
Yeah.
The article was not from Innovate.
Oh.
I have a friend who works at Innovate, and she posted it on her personal Facebook.
Perfect.
Not from Innovate.
That's why I didn't see it. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sandra. Well, it's a good article. I will have to, I'll have to send the link out to everyone because it's a good article. It's called Reopening School, What It Might Look Like. And it's done through Cult of Pedagogy at cultofpedagogy.com. But one of the things they talked about within alternating half days or half days was maybe having students clustered in cohorts. So put students in small groups and have them stay together, which would reduce mixing and would reduce the chance of spread. Another one, another variation on this was one course at a time. And this was keeping kids in the same class for a couple weeks. This would be more of the middle and high school, where you just have a teacher focus on one group of kids for 2 weeks, and then they would move on to the next subject for the next couple weeks. It's an interesting idea. My concern would be what they might lose in between there. And then there was another one. Oh, no, that I covered that one. Okay. So then let's see, where was I at when I took off on that? So the last one, I've actually added a couple here, alternating classroom remote learning on a week rotation. And this was an idea proposed by former San Jose Unified School District Superintendent Vince Matthews. He's proposed it when he's talking about San Francisco Unified School District. And what intrigues me about this is part of the having all the students on the campus each day, if you're splitting the day half and half, is that it's that much more space to clean up, and it's harder. There needs to be more time for that cleaning. Where if you have the same group there a whole week, you have a better chance of someone shows up sick, it will spread less because you can contain that situation if it's the same people there all week versus everyone there each day or everyone there within 48 hours. So there's something about this weekly plan that seems in my head registers as a slightly more safe plan. And I don't know what you think, but are any of these, I mean, the problem is none of these ideas are great, right? But are any of these falling to your ears as probably a lesser evil than others? No?
I like that option for people who need to have face-to-face, and then giving the students or some families options to continue the distance learning who need to do that. So having both options would be something that I would be interested in.
Right. You know, it dawned on me, let me stop sharing just for a minute because, oh, I have a bunch of people waiting. Let me let them in. Let's see, admit. I can't disable the wait room here. Okay. But I agree with you. I think the option is going to have to stay on board because, as you said, it works for some people, right? Yeah. Okay. Let me go back. I'll just check periodically. Okay. So there's some things, oops. So what's expected to increase is, of course, I'm expecting more family communication. And so far it's been coming, you know, we're notified pretty well of meals, but I think a lot of the information they're conveying in the board meetings is far more robust than what we're getting outside of the board meetings. So I'd like to see some of those messages conveyed out more. There will need to be an increase of nurses and of course janitorial. And along with janitorial, you know, there's a need for more of the cleaning supplies. And if they have to do regular deep cleanings, and this will be determined probably locally, it might be best to work with an outside organization so we're not exhausting our staff. But my concern is with cleaning supplies. We saw a push in hoarding happening early on, and I would be worried about things running out. You know, to assure safe practices, there'll need to be an increase in campus management. And this could be done with parent volunteers at the start of the year while students learn the new expectations of social distancing. Or if school ground play structures are open, that's another thing we need to wonder about, right? Cleaning will fall to students or the campus management teams, and that's going to be change on timing because we have to be something accommodated for in the daily plan. And everything I've seen about bringing people back together has an emphasis on outdoor learning. Being out in the fresh air certainly will help reduce the chances of things spreading. And enclosed spaces with multiple people are, of course, the increased risk. So more opportunities to get outdoor, breathe the fresh air, the better, playing Simon Says, have learning stations for science, take an outdoor art break, physical activity, etc. But unfortunately, we need to look at the budget, right? So this is, I found these next few slides, the information on them are from the district site. If you go to the district site and just put into their search budget, it will give you information that's available this year. And the funny thing about this slide, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but if you look at April and May, you could kind of see it. That purple bar is this year. It's to represent this year. And I know those are way off because those were projected when this was done in December. And a lot of that funding has been eaten up with the meals, the free meals that they're working on. So it'll be interesting to see if they update this soon, because I imagine those numbers are vastly different than they are represented here. So the fiscal year, this was sent out in December. Our student body was already down, and this is something we're expecting for next year, for the student body to continue to decrease as families move. Some families will choose to do alternative schools, whether it's a private school or homeschooling. You know, but meanwhile, we plan on a projection. So it's going to be a tough year to have any projections add up to the reality. Bear with me just a second. I need to see if there's anyone in the wait room. Okay, we're good. All right. Okay. So let me go back to that. Oops, let me go back to that slide if it will let me. Aha. Okay. So our funds this, oops. So already this year, we were down in student body. We had a few more positions than before, which we've always needed. I'm sorry, but we've been understaffed for a little while. Salaries have been down, which is not good. Health and benefits, actually the packages are pretty robust. I think they're just down for another reason here, probably negotiation. And revenue per student was up, and part of that is coming from special education of all places. So that's been nice to know. So the funds and needs, these are different pots of money that they're drawing from. The unrestricted general fund is what's spent on the majority of the students. So facility maintenance, this one here, I could see that one going up because of the cost of keeping everything clean and the additional supplies that will take. But some of it could be recovered from federal funding and state funding. And then the Child Development Fund for preschool programs, most of this is grant money. So it will depend on if those grants are able to maintain or not. And I think they're about to be renewed and on a 3-year plan. So I think we have one more year, and then I don't know what's going to happen. But this is the one that I really appreciate. So I used to roll my eyes when Steve McMahon would post special reserves, and I would look at these millions of dollars that we were setting aside, and I would be like, why aren't we paying our teachers better? Every time he posted this. But now I'm like, thank God, because I think the fact that we have this level of reserve to start going in, this level of reserve is helping to offset that loss from all the meals that have been paid for, and will prevent our district from going into filing bankruptcy. And I think some schools are going to have to file bankruptcy sooner than others. And I think it's going to help our district survive at least for a couple years, hoping that things can start to get back to some level of normalcy. But I'm hoping that this is one pot that I think will definitely be dwindled down from all this, but I'm glad that it's as robust as it is. So the general fund, Governor Newsom had to do an 8% cut, and that equates to about $6.4 billion for our schools. That's not just K through 12. This includes the colleges. So the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, helps recuperate some of that, but it breaks down to about 1.5 billion for the K through 12 schools, and then 1.7 for the California colleges. So it might buffer about a third of this. The hope is that the HEROES Act will also go through, and unfortunately that's when we're all holding our breaths on. I think Congress passed it through. It still needs to be finalized. So, but there's a lot of debate over this one, and I think mostly because people feel it's too much money, and it's really frustrating that they're not seeing the value of education at the national level. I think this would be a smart investment. It would bring 10 billion to California education. And that with our 8% cut, it's something that we would need to alleviate some of the damage that cut would do. And the last time we had severe cuts was 2008, and it was a lot of layoffs involved with that. And, you know, I think teachers are still feeling quite burned from that. And I think we just need to find a better way to face these cuts. So now what to do to help our students. I think I'm hearing from a lot of families what to do for to help our students if we're feeling that they've slipped behind. How can we get them into other classes? Are there camps available? I know you'll have to bear with me while I check again to see if I have, no, okay, good. Okay. No one in the waiting room, that's good. Okay. So when I had to take my son out for a while and homeschool him, the first thing I was told not to do is kill the love of learning. So anything you choose to do this summer, if at any point it becomes a point of stress between you and your child, or your child and whatever activity you're pushing them to do, and you think that it's impacting their love of learning in a negative way, that's when you might need to concede and not do that anymore and find something else. The two skills that should be groomed as much as possible are writing and math skills. So with writing for elementary, there's some great suggestions out there, like making your own book. There's a lot of websites that have different ideas and sometimes even different formats to work with. Kids who prefer artwork and don't care to write a lot, a great warm-up to that is creating your own comic book. And sometimes it's a fun project to do together in the evenings, just because it's a chance to hear a little bit of the creativity inside of them and learn more about your kids. Upper grades, there's journaling is a great way, just emotionally, journaling is a great way to have a child get used to how do you put it? To express themselves through writing, because you need to do so much of that in middle and high school. Young Inklings is a group out of Palo Alto. I don't know if you've heard of them before. They're really good. They've done some after school work. They actually work with younger kids too, but the online stuff is aimed more at middle and high school. And it's a lot of different ideas. They do anything from poetry to making books. And Young Inklings has put together books that they've published and had small stores like Hicklebees sell. So they're really a great option for a kid that enjoys writing or might be struggling a little bit and need that spark to just kind of get them going with writing. Commonsense.org has a lot of websites for more writing options that I would point you to too. And then in high school, quill.org, it's a free website. They do a free diagnostic, which I think is important when you're getting into middle and high school. And then they direct you to write lessons. And what I didn't quite grasp when I was looking at their site was whether or not you as a parent get a continued evaluation of where they're at, or if it's just the one diagnostic. So that was something you could ask them. I don't know, but a lot of rave reviews about quill.org, so that would be one to look at. Outschool.com has online classes, and you pay by the class. And some of their classes, if you reach out to them, they're on a sliding scale. So this is if you have a kid like mine that will not be self-driven, this is a great option because there's a teacher and regular check-in. Teenlink.com is a paper, a blog, a site, whatever you want to call it. It's by teens for teens, and they do everything from poetry to art and words to essays to blogs. So it's nice because you're with your peers, but you definitely have to have that kind of student that likes to write. And OWL at Purdue is great for students that like to write too. And you're actually getting that university support and guidance in some of the writing skills. They have classes and online as well. And then Links Through Learning, if you need a private tutor, my boys were on, my boys seemed to be dysgraphic. They hated writing. It was a trigger for any outburst for a while when they were in their late grades. And going from 6th grade to middle school, my oldest child had 2nd grade writing skills. He'd barely get a sentence or two on the paper, and they were able to take him from 2nd grade to 6th grade level plus over the summer. So that's another great option. And she's really good at working on through Google Documents and talking your student through it, so she could do this remotely too, which I think would be great. Math, so there are online classes that the school site has. I don't know if you've explored, San Jose Unified School District has the Twig science lessons, and I've watched a few. They're kind of cool. They were elementary school level, and I was enjoying them. So, so Twig science lessons were good. Dreambox of, you know, the ILX. These are things that the district has, and if you ask them if they would keep it open for your student, I think they're working on that right now, negotiating with the vendor to keep that contract open for students this year. So if you add your ask to it, I think it will encourage them to complete that negotiation. Khan Academy, of course, it's great. Not all kids like it, but it's a good, colorful, so many math teachers are tapping into it through this. So it's a great way to have your students engage with math and have very colorful, engaging lessons. What I appreciate about Khan Academy is that when you log in as a parent, it shows you about where your child is. So there's some reporting to you, which is helpful. Math Playground is a lot of video games that are math-based. So if you have a kid that just likes to play games, that doesn't like to just do problems all the time, this is one way to kind of meet them in the middle and have video games that are math-based. San Jose Library, they have all their resources still online, so you could enter their ABC Mouse program and other programs they have to learn. They also have bedtime reading stories that are recorded, so it's sweet what the libraries are doing. Middle school, artofproblemsolving.com. They have classes and free online lessons, and let's see. And then OutSchool again with their online lessons. What I liked about OutSchool is they have coding available too. And then camps. So all of our camps that any of us have ever used, they're trying to do something, which has been great. So if you reach out to the YMCA camps, they're trying to do something. They have a huge 82-page field guide on safe practices that if you're looking at a YMCA camp, you might want to just, I would say breeze through, but I'm a slow reader. Read it, skim it, see if you feel good about sending your child into YMCA camp. I think they're doing everything that they can to make sure it's a safe experience. Steve and Kate's, they're wanting to open. They're still saying to be determined on their opening dates. Schmal Science is locally here. They're going forward. They're having some camps, and I think some camps are virtual with them. So there's still options with Schmal Science. Imagination Lab in Palo Alto, I've heard a lot of parents up there rave about it. it's worth looking at. And then Galileo camps, they're doing camps this summer. Athena camps is doing, I think they're doing virtual camps, which is kind of fun too. But if you have a kid who just, doesn't like the traditional camp setting, my boys have gravitated to live action role play. And this is where you are building padded weapons. You're sent out on quests. It's like Dungeons and Dragons come alive. Their website is posted here. It's the fanmore.com. So that's another option to consider. And so all of these have websites you could go to and explore. And if you'd like to, I'll just send this out to you guys so you could look at this. All right. And then family travel, we're so reduced this year. Camping is probably one of the best things you could do this summer because it's one of the safer ones. You're taking your own bedding with you. You're in your tent. You're keeping pretty much to your family. The only place where it gets a little dicey is when you go to use the restrooms and showers. Yosemite, they were talking about opening, and then they decided to stay closed to the end of this month and reevaluate. But what they've been talking about is opening up to half the capacity. And then you have to schedule with them your plan on when you intend to be on trails so that they're sure that trails aren't getting overcrowded. And there's a ton of virtual tours. So you could always go on a round the world tour and each week visit another country online with your family, maybe check out a few cities. Everyone does a little research and gets to be a tour guide. But traveling is going to be a little bit limited. Beaches are expected to open because the water is safe. They'll just be limited in crowds. And then of course, pools we know are going to open. So that is all I have. Oh, kids watching YouTube. I forgot I added this slide. My kids just like YouTube. I don't know about you, but there were a lot of sites with great suggestions on where to then send that YouTube brained kid to maybe have a little learning. And History Illustrated is great. It tells a lot of stories. It's everything you liked about the storytelling aspect of history. Homeschool Pop has a wide variety of videos. Crash Course I didn't explore. Smithsonian is more, it's a great way to kind of dive into little bits of history of what they have in their museum. Steve Spangler's Sick Science is really engaging, really far out there fun stuff he does. So certainly the lessons will have your kids making a little bit of a mess. So I point to that one cautiously. Thinker I didn't explore, but I've heard a lot of good things about. It's a lot of innovation and building involved in it. And then TED Ed has a lot of those talks that are based in education. So there's some good ones to explore there. And I'm interested in what you have to add. But the last thing I'd suggest is to work on those life skill lessons, because certainly summertime is always the time when we get that opportunity to work on life skill lessons. The San Jose Unified had a great PDF that was there at the very beginning of this COVID outbreak, and then they took down the PDF, but I saved it. So that address will still get you to that box page. So the basic skills we don't even think about, like, hey, can you tell that this milk is spoiled? You'd be surprised at how many kids don't notice. So maybe have your child help you clean out the refrigerator and test them on a few things, because certainly that could be a lifesaver to know what food is spoiled. Managing money, there's one of the banks has this great S's for Savings article. It helps the younger kids begin to learn about how to kind of maybe think about, if they're receiving an allowance, how to start setting some of that aside. And then if you have a tween that can mow lawn or pull weeds, then maybe start asking neighbors if they would let them come work for them and start to feel like they were contributing. Okay. All right. I'm going to exit from that. Ta-da. Back to faces, so much better. All right, any thoughts?
Kristen, could you email out that link to the PDF you mentioned?
The life skills?
Life skills?
Yeah. Yes, actually, let me see if I could do that. Yeah, I'll have to email it out. It's not letting me slip back in and do that right now. Is it?
Hey, Kristen, it's Leanne. Has there been any talk about summer school for SPED?
So I just put that link in chat, everyone. So I talked only to Marianne, who's doing the high school over at Willow Glen, and she was a little overwhelmed when I talked to her. It was a couple weeks ago when she was just starting to set everything else aside and focus in on it. She's really working on doing individual plans. So because it will be remote, she's having to figure out how to individually work with each student, and that's 150 individual plans. So I'm hoping after she reviews all those IEPs, and that's a lot to read, but she's a very dedicated person, and I know when she says I'm going to read all 150 IEPs, that's exactly what she's going to do. So she's going to look at all those, and then from that, hopefully she'll be able to figure out specific categories to kind of maybe clump people together a little bit so that it's not so individualized, but still working with some groups and helping the teachers be able to work with everybody more readily. So that's all I know for now, Leanne. I haven't talked to her since, and it's been just a couple weeks. I have heard, and this comes from Patrick Bernhardt, that the speech and language pathologists, that their agreement in the teachers association is being amended and changed, but it has not been approved yet. So it's still in that off time. And I'm hoping for the community advisory committee this Wednesday night that's something that Seth will touch upon. What I'm hearing is very innovative, and I think it addresses a lot of issues that speech and language pathologists have with scheduling. And so I'm hopeful for it, but I'm wondering if all parties got to weigh in on it or not. Yeah.
Are they making changes to the SPED teachers?
Only SLP.
Just SLP.
Yeah,
Well, I'm sure a lot of it is around case management because that's been a big issue.
It is. So my understanding is they're separating out the task of the SLP will now be subdivided. So some SLPs will be working just the therapeutic aspect, and some speech and language pathologists are just doing the assessment part of the job. The concern is, where that does bridge over is when you're planning out all the goals and everything, that now you would have, you're adding in some consult time between the two, but the hope is that alleviates, our speech and language pathologists work at least 12-hour days. So I'm hoping it will reduce burnout and give them more time to give the students time. And I'll bring it up. I think I could do that. I emailed him in advance telling him I expected him to bring it up. So it's not like I'd be thrusting on him without warning. I emailed him on Friday saying I would like you to, I hear there's a new agreement. I'd like it to understand it. Could you please talk about it? So hopefully that'll give us a chance to understand as a community.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I am worried about next year. I imagine I'm not the only one with concerns. I feel like the sinks of the bathrooms are not enough for all the hand washing that will need to happen.
So have you been hearing any concerns from teachers about going back? And as well, if a lot of teachers have kids themselves, and just orchestrating, I think it's a logistics issue as well, right? Because if you think of, the teachers, whatever they decide in terms of half days or rotating weeks, or, if teachers have kids and their schedule is different than their kids' schedule, how are the teachers going to be in the classrooms if their kids are at home?
Yeah.
And then you add busing and how are they, we have
Well,
school
and
today.
not crowded busing. It has to be.
And exactly, they're going to have more buses in order to have social distancing on buses. So,
Yeah.
Whatever they figure out, then they have to figure the logistics of everything. And have you heard of them in thinking about any of from the logistics standpoint, hiring someone with logistics expertise? Because I think that is going to be a big part of execution.
I think there's a lot of sense that they have the best expertise they need, but I think you're right that it would not hurt to have a consult from someone who's better at kind of the almost an emergency response kind of level of thinking, to plot these all out. The main point is that this isn't an issue that's happened on such a large level before. So we have to look at smaller things, like you look at how are they handling things after a hurricane, and how are they handling things after the larger fires, and what did they learn from that? And I'm not hearing enough of those discussions really happen. I was glad to see in this article you sent, Sandra, there was a little talk about what they learned from just in how to approach the students with rather than focusing on recovering what they lost, that to just continue on with the school teaching schedule as normal, and then the gaps in the students' skill and knowledge were filled in and scaffolded as needed. That was a far better approach than trying to work with them on recovering, because they lost a lot of students' interest by going back and trying to recover the lessons lost. So I'm hoping some of this information that they're looking at, but you bring up a good point that this is a time to probably hire in someone who has that kind of specialty. And I would love to see it done on the county level, and then just have it accessible to everyone, because I think, but then that might be a burden. But yeah, I think that's a good point. And then with teachers, I'm hearing mixed things. Like, I'm hearing teachers who really loved teaching online, and I'm hearing teachers who really struggled with teaching online because it was just not their forte. They like that, being in that same space and the energy of the students to work with. So yeah, I think each teacher has an individual feel on how they are approaching it. What I am hearing, though, is a lot of concern of their own safety, because if they have to work with 4 students each day, when you're dealing with a contagion, you're not just working with that individual and whatever they bring into the room, but they're bringing in whatever they've been exposed to into the room. So the more students that you're facing each day, so the idea of having a half the student body each week is one thing I think would appeal to the teachers. But I think, on top of the masks and lots of washing, we need to consider maybe the face guards for teachers and just anything they need to feel safer about coming back to work, if we get to open our doors. And of course, the hope is that there'll be something there in place by the fall. The thing is, they need to know what to plan for soon. I mean, we're almost at June. So if they don't know by June what to plan for, that's hard to figure out what professional developments to line up. And obviously, there's going to need more professional development in the remote teaching skills. But there are teachers who don't learn well remotely themselves, who really struggled with what professional development was given before and could use that in-person training. So but that's all I'm hearing. I haven't spoken to a wide breadth of teachers because it's just not that opportunity. Have you heard anything, Sandra?
Not from any teachers locally. I have a friend who's a teacher coach in the district.
Okay.
And then my sister-in-law is a middle school teacher down in LA Unified.
Oh, okay.
And her perspective is, she has a elementary school age son.
Mm-hmm.
And so, her perspective is, if her son's schedule is different than her schedule, and there's no aftercare, because before he was in aftercare.
Oh.
But if there's no aftercare, then she can't go back to the classroom. It's a non-starter, right? And she's one of those who, you know, she's in her, I wouldn't say she's young, she's in her late 40s, but she's online learning seamlessly and has done it very well. And so she'd be fine staying digital, but it is also driving her crazy because, you know, it's nonstop. Parents and kids texting her, you know, all hours of the day. So she's always on. But to her, it's more of the logistics. If the logistics side isn't figured out, then she can't go back into the classroom, right? And she's also worried about her own health and safety. My friend who's the teacher coach, for San Jose Unified, her perspective is that some of the teachers were very resistant to going online. That a lot of the teachers just didn't have the skills. So it was a heavy lift, and that much more time was needed and training was needed. And obviously, given the circumstances, we didn't have that luxury, right?
Yeah.
But she's heard nothing about what would happen in the fall.
Well, because they don't, right? I mean, even the California Department of Education, they were saying they didn't know. The California Department of Education had a great presentation Thursday morning, just from all of the different stakeholders. They had a superintendent, a teacher, a janitor, all talking about, you know, when school reopens, what they would hope for. And, you know, I thought the janitor said it best, that we need to re-educate what it's going to be like to be at school to all the students. And that might need to start before kids return to school, like video lessons that are given access to parents to share with their kids on, you know, how school's going to be a little different. There's no running up and hugging your friends. You have to stay socially distant and practice that when you're out in the community. The frequent hand washing, that there will be hand washing breaks, how to be on the bus, how to be in the library, how to be on the playground, how to be in the cafeteria. You know, a lot of things are going to change. And then certainly all of our eyes are on other schools too, right? But yeah.
Yeah.
I wish there was a good answer for next fall. I really do. But
I don't think there are any good answers. I think it's going to be choosing the best out of only poor options, right? And I think I don't think that we're going to be able to plan ahead for what the fall is going to look like.
Right.
I think the district needs to scenario plan and prepare for several different possibilities, which isn't efficient. But I think they're going to have plans in place for if A, then B, right?
Right.
Have multiple contingency plans in place ahead of time, depending on, you know, as we open, do we have more cases or don't we have more cases? Do we have a second wave? Don't we have a second wave? If we go back and then we have to shelter in place again and they have to shut down, then what? I think that the district should be planning now multiple avenues.
Yes.
If they're waiting to say, okay, in fall it's going to be this, I don't think that's realistic.
Well, and the questionnaire is to come out to us this week from Jody Lax and her team, right? And it'll be interesting to see what they get from that. I'm glad that they're sending it out to parents, and they're sending out one to students, and they're sending out one to teachers to just kind of get feedback on how things went and learn from that. But I liked what the article you sent said, where they should get a beat on that now, and then after they formulated a plan and it's up and running, to then revisit all those to send out the questionnaire again and get another data point on that.
Kristen?
Yep.
Another concern I have just in what I do.
Yeah.
Social distancing with sped kids who require
Yeah.
is not gonna, there's no way that I could be effective at 6 feet away.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Especially when, when we have, well, across the district, we have a lot of students who are nonverbal. We're having to toilet.
Mhm.
We're having,
Yeah.
there's.
So then there needs to be additional training on the safe practices around that then, for sure. Right? Because I know that you have a sense of what the guidelines would be, but I think there needs to be more formal training.
Yeah, I
I
would think there would need to be.
Yeah.
But if we're having to do hand over hand like we do for some students,
Yeah.
yeah. Especially the non-communicators, the ones that rely on PEC systems and just rely on the closeness. I mean, that's where they get their trust from us, and they've been without it. So my concern is behaviorally, we're going to have a lot of behavior problems, just them getting into a new routine. And the masks are going to be an issue for SPED students.
Mm-hmm. Sensory, sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I that's where my concerns are.
Well, and Dr. Dewan had said something at some point where part of the issue there is that there's going to be a point where you're going to have to tell families you can't have your student at the school if they're unable to follow the safety protocols, right? So I think that's a burden on families, especially with respite not being available from SARC anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's going to cause, it just kind of is funny to me that we're going to draw the line on this, but with students in the past, it didn't matter what they did, they had to come to school.
Yeah.
We've always told parents, you have to bring your kid to school no matter what.
Right.
Now those same families possibly could be told, well, your child is so out of control and can't maintain the safeties, so they can't come to school now.
Right. Yeah. I hear you. I do hear you on that one. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm wondering if, they have this new behavioral team, right?
Yeah.
How are they going to be able to help with that? They all sound kind of new to me.
Yeah, I mean, the in-service that I attended, they are relatively new. At the elementary sites, I think they're more available. We haven't had a behavior people in forever.
Okay.
At Willow Glen.
But has there been need though?
Well, I do it.
Okay. I hear that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yes.
So, I think Willow Glen is unique only because we do have a lot of dedicated special ed people.
Yeah.
And, I think we know our students pretty well that will, it's going to be tricky, but,
How big are the special ed rooms? Because if they're talking about needing to space them more, the special ed rooms have usually been, the special day classrooms, sorry,
right.
have been smaller because it's a smaller class. No? They've been traditional size?
Yeah, and you know what, Willow Glen, everything's very varied.
Okay.
I don't think there's any,
Not
there,
a box.
I mean, on the same wing that I am, none of the classes are the same size.
Okay.
Kristen, so
Yeah.
how do they expect, instructional aides to help, kids with special needs hand over hand and, sitting still and complied, you can't do that at a distance, it's not like, hey, put your pencil down from a distance, you gotta physically help them.
Right.
I'm not quite sure how that would work.
Yeah, I'm almost, yeah, that's exactly what Leanne was saying, is there's no way to respect the social distance rule with that. And then, I would think that then you would need more safety gear for yourselves. You'd have to glove up probably.
Yeah.
There's a lot of debate on whether gloves are any better than just regular hand washing. And certainly the masks, but the mask only helps you when it's on your face and not getting pulled off by another student. So, uh-oh. Sorry, I guess someone doesn't have a password. Let me see what's going on there. Huh.
Well, again, the kids aren't going to wear the mask, and they might play with the mask because it's a distraction.
Yes.
So I give all the warm water.
What about it? What was that again? Oh, was that background? I'm sorry.
I was, I'll offer, I go to physical therapy. I've restarted going in person. I was just doing the video at first, but now I've begun going in person to physical therapy, and I wear a mask. My physical therapist wears a mask.
Okay.
He works on me physically, doing, what physical therapists do. And, I wash my hands when I come in. He washes his hands. We both wear masks. And then when we're done, he cleans, the tables and everything with a disinfectant, a hospital-grade disinfectant between each patient. I wash my hands before I leave. He washes his hands between, every patient. So he's still touching and, having that hands-on experience. I go home and take a shower afterwards, right? Which obviously the kids aren't going to be able to do during their school day, and the OT or the PT or the aide isn't going to be able to, take a shower during the school day. But I'm just wondering if some of those physical barriers and having hand washing, because, the main, you don't want to be touching your face, right? So if they're having a PPE and face shields and being able to protect themselves, but still have that closer proximity that's needed.
Yeah.
Is that a way to keep the staff safe and still be able to serve our kids?
And I think that's something that they're definitely going to look into, all the different avenues that they need to prepare staff so that they can be the safest in that. But and I like the face shields over the masks, but I have to say that there are plenty of kids that I've seen that are in the moderate to severe classes that would see that on somebody's face and want it off because it's scary, So
I also think they need to find a way to get ready for the next disaster. It just, what if we lived in a tornado city? It happens more often. This is sort of a wake-up call that, any of these things can happen. So we need to make it, a switch from home base to school base. I'm just saying that we need to have an alternative ready to go, when things happen like this. I think the district needs to be ready.
I'm speculating that this is something that the Inclusion Collaborative is already talking about. So let me touch base with my contacts there and see what they're formulating, Because I've asked them to just come up with a, teaching teachers how to teach parents to teach, kind of a workshop. But this is another important one. It's like teaching the teachers and the aides in special day classes how to have the safest practices possible. So, and then how to teach the students what that will look like. I think there's going to have to be some stories before they come to school where you're sharing videos of this is what the room's going to look like, and this is how we're going to behave in this room, and this is what the staff is now going to look like, So.
Yeah, I think absolutely there should be, for a smoother transition would be a lot of front loading.
Well, then that's something to ask about the CAC meeting later this week, right? Of what they're doing to build that up. If they're going to leave that ownership onto each classroom individually, or if they're going to do something as a district.
Yeah, those are all good questions.
My preference would be each classroom because it's going to be different class to class, but I don't know if we have the bandwidth to do it each class. So, okay.
Well, it'd be nice if we could just get into our classrooms.
Yeah. So the water line that burst at Willow Glen High School was in the counseling wing. Is that right?
Oh, I did not hear.
Marianne said it was right over her office.
Right over her office?
Yes.
So that's the attendance office.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, I thought it was a classroom when I heard of it before, but I guess it's the office is there. And if someone hadn't been inappropriately driving through the school, it would have gone unnoticed. It had been going on for more than a day.
Oh no.
Yeah. So hopefully that will be fixed soon. Yeah. Well, if we can't open schools in the fall, I would like to see access to textbooks online, right?
Kristen, I gotta say goodbye. My kids want some dinner, so we're gonna go on. But please keep me posted, and we are recording, so we're gonna finish it. Hopefully, finish the rest of this.
Yes.
Have a good week.
Thank you, Deborah. You too.
Bye bye.
Bye. How about as families? What would you like to see as more support for families? I mean, we heard babysitting for the teachers. I think around school care is going to be needed too, right?
Yeah, after, how are they going to do, especially for elementary, how are they going to do aftercare?
Well, like if they decide to go with a half day, the half day thing, it's going to have to be around school instead of after school, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, and childcare for teachers. But what kind of support would you have liked to have had as parents in these last couple weeks?
So one thing I found really helpful is that we had some meetings for any parents that wanted to do it, and that way we could discuss ideas. So having some kind of regular meeting time would be really helpful. Maybe once every 2 weeks, or whatever it is.
Was that with teachers or administrators?
It was with both. We have a lot of teachers who are parents as well.
Okay.
And so the principal, the superintendent, and then it broke down by school.
Okay. So was it done in kind of a town hall fashion, or would they informed you where things were at? And
yeah, right. And it was just nice to see what the other parents were thinking, and they were bringing ideas from their workplaces, and it was direct contact to the staff. And I liked what she said about disseminating the information from the school board, requesting that to be part of the regular briefings. on top of the meals or whatever.
Right?
Yes, that's
Seems
like
so
key.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what comes out versus what was said in the board meeting is it's
Yeah.
not enough, I think. And I think what ends up going out to all the families just kind of furthers the frustration instead of
Mhm.
diffusing it.
Well said.
Well, now you're gonna get all of us moving out to the coast.
You know, one thing that arose for me when we were talking and I was listening is I know that there's not a lot of information, but I liked what someone was saying, maybe with Sandra, about having backup plans so that we can implement them and be more proactive about it instead of waiting. Is this actually a good time for parents to look into advocating for themselves, reaching out to see if they need more assistance at home, like an aide at home or something, if they're having an aide at school and they need that one-on-one because their child is not likely to comply with the behavioral stuff? How would we implement, the least restrictive environment kind of stuff at home?
Yeah, that's a testy one, right? Because that's something that would require more funding.
Exactly.
And then we just don't, sorry, I'm getting a text from someone I was hoping would come in onto the call. I'm sorry, Lois. I don't know if she could hear me yet. So I'm sorry. She was in my waiting room and I just didn't notice. Lois, I'm so sorry. I didn't look at the side of my screen. But yeah, I think it might be smart then to approach that from the parent aspect of asking parents if they're having their needs met, and then working with parents, helping parents to figure out how they can arrange that, right? Yeah. That's certainly something I think all CACs are going to have to keep their eye on, right? And SELPA directors. Yeah.